a theory. Tonight I find out why Darwin struggled with his theory of evolution.
That's a fossil. Wow.
We find out why Dallas can't lie.
Have you ever betrayed the trust of a friend or family member?
And Jem will try to make a human-powered flying machine that floats. That's Bango's The Theory, putting science to the test.
Welcome to the show. Just before we kick off, quick reminder that our very own Dr. Yan will be broadcasting right here tonight on the BBC in an extra dimension. No expense spared.
But don't worry, you don't need special 3D specs to get the full effect. Just a pair of these.
Really?
Sunglasses.
But we kick off the show with the father of evolution, Charles Darwin. Now, these days, we kind of take it for granted that he's responsible for one of the most important scientific theories of our time, natural selection. But during his life, that legacy was far from certain. Fossils are like photographs set in stone, records of the various organisms, plants, and animals that inhabited the Earth millions of years ago. By studying them, scientists have been able to map out the entire history of life on Earth. But there was something about the fossil record that troubled one of the greatest scientists of them all, my hero, Charles Darwin. If his theory was true and all life on Earth had evolved from initially very simple organisms, then there should be clear evidence of those simple species gradually evolving into others, all of them captured in time as fossils embedded in the rocks. But this was Darwin's dilemma. The fossils proving the existence of those early life forms simply weren't there. In Darwin's time, the earliest known fossils came from around 540 million years ago, a period known as the Cambrian. No older specimens had ever been found, leading later experts to name the seemingly sudden emergence of fossils as the Cambrian explosion. But this was bad news for Darwin. He was sure simple forms of life had to have started millions of years before then.
Darwin would have been familiar with a whole range of fossils, right from the Cambrian through to more or less the recent today. But I mean, he would have been familiar with fossils such as this, which is a trilobite from Dudley.
Amazing specimen, isn't it?
Trilobites are related to things like lobsters and woodlice today. They're quite a complex animal.
It does have eyes, it has legs, they had a gut. So for Darwin's theory to be true, this would have had to evolve slowly from simpler organisms,
That's right.
But that was the problem, wasn't it?
That's exactly his dilemma, because in the pre-Cambrian rocks, he couldn't see what would have given rise later on to organisms like this.
Darwin was so worried about this lack of pre-Cambrian fossils that he wrote about it extensively in The Origin of Species. And I've been invited to Cambridge, the university where he studied, to visit the Darwin archives and find out more. Jim, is this what I think it is?
Yes, it's a copy of the first edition of The Origin of Species, and not only that, it's Darwin's personal copy.
No way. This is so special. I spent hours and hours learning about different scientific principles based on this man's studies, and now I'm actually looking at his own personal copy.
Here's a place where Darwin talks specifically about the problem of the early fossils.
Okay, so geology assuredly does not reveal any such finely graduated organic chain, and this perhaps is the most obvious and gravest objection which can be urged against my theory. The explanation lies, as I believe, in the extreme imperfection of the geological record. I mean, that is really important. In a book he has published about his findings, he has no qualms about admitting what's missing, and it's a big problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And he actually thinks that there's as many creatures that go back before the Cambrian explosion as after. So it's a huge thing that he's missing there.
Amazing.
Here's an interesting bit.
Okay, so to the question why we do not find records of these vast primordial periods, I can give no satisfactory answer. So he's admitting he believes they existed, but why can't we find them? I don't know. Darwin's dilemma outlived him. When he died in 1882, the elusive Precambrian fossils still hadn't been found. The breakthrough would eventually come 75 years later amongst the Precambrian rocks here in Charnwood Forest in Leicestershire. In the summer of 1957, a group of school children made a discovery, what appeared to be a fossil embedded in the rock face. Since Darwin's death, several other findings had been made in Precambrian rocks, but had all been dismissed as natural rock indentations. Dr. Phil took me to see one example deep in Charnwood Forest to explain why.
Well, they were very simple structures, an example of which is here.
That's a fossil. Wow. Well, I can see how this could look like a geological feature, like groundwater leaving marks. So this is the kind of stuff they were finding around the world then.
That's right. Fossils were so rare in the rocks then. There are only a handful of localities in the world today where people know of fossils of Precambrian age. And none of them looked like what you'd consider a normal fossil. None of them had shells or bones or teeth.
Okay.
And so they weren't easy for people to identify as fossils.
So the 1957 find was really important, wasn't it?
It was, because for one of the first times we could actually identify something that was definitely organic, was definitely a fossil in a Precambrian rock.
And this is the fossil the children found in 1957. It's called Charnia, and it lived 560 million years ago. It may look like a plant, but it lived too deep underwater to feed like one. Now, it had no gut, no mouth part, so it probably absorbed or filtered nutrients in some way. Beyond that, Charnia remains a bit of an enigma, but what we do know is that at the time, it was the oldest fossil ever to be identified. This one fossil forced geologists to reassess all previous Precambrian finds, allowing them to unlock the secrets of the early life forms that Darwin had theorized about all those years before. At long last, his dilemma had been solved.
It is amazing to think that Darwin actively drew attention to a potential flaw in his theory rather than just, sweep it under the carpet and hope that it would go away.
That's what makes him an amazing scientist, being able to objectively discuss your findings without having all the answers. I really wish, though, that he'd been alive to witness, the conclusive proof of Precambrian life in the fossil records. And, just a decade after the discovery of Charnia, a new fossil record had been mapped, and our understanding of the origins of life moved on in leaps and bounds. Amazing stuff.
I was wondering if we could make a human-powered hydrofoil.
Okay.
So a hydrofoil is a boat that's got a wing. It doesn't float, it flies.
Right.
And Dallas and I are good at cycling, so I figured we could use pedal power to drive it through the water and fly.
Simple.
G'day. Well, before going to the trouble of actually building a human-powered hydrofoil, I figured I should do a test to find out whether aeroplane wings do work that well in water. Here goes. The theory says they should work a treat. Water is 800 times denser than air, so I should get 800 times more lift from a wing in water. Even with these tiny wings. First, like an aeroplane, it takes a lot of power to drive the wings fast enough for them to generate enough lift for takeoff. That's solved when you've tied yourself to the back of a mate's van. Just like an aeroplane, the next problem you encounter is controlling it when you're actually airborne, particularly pitch control. that not only flies, it whistles when it flies. That's absolutely amazing. There is no doubt that wings work in water. Now that I know the theory stacks up, the next task is going to be to build my flying boat. And the key will be getting our hydrofoil up to takeoff speed. I'd estimated Dallas and I should be able to produce about 600 watts of power between us. And that's the only power we'll have to get 80 kilos of homemade boat and 160 kilos of body weight out of the water. I reckon the most efficient way of doing that is going to be by pedalling this tandem as hard as possible. But even then, we'll only just have enough power to get airborne. We are exactly 1 day from putting this in the water, and at the moment we've just got a vast amount of components that have yet to be assembled, and almost all of those components are doing a job that they weren't designed to do, with the exception of the propeller, which is something that we've carved ourselves. That's the position we're in. It's no wonder I'm just a bit worried. Fortunately, it all came together overnight. And the next morning, we were ready for our first test at a secret military test tank. But would it work? With the arrival of my second motor, there was only one way to find out.
Hey man.
Dallas.
How's it going?
Okay.
There's a reassuring amount of gaffer tape on it.
This is special marine tape. It's even better than gaffer tape.
So do you want to talk me through it?
Yeah, we're going to sit here.
Yeah.
We'll pedal as hard as we can.
Yeah.
And as we do this, the chain drive that sleeps down here will turn that propeller.
Is that going to generate the amount of thrust we need to actually get us airborne?
Nothing else will generate thrust. That's all we've got.
It just seems small.
Just like my surfboard, a test tow showed that provided we could generate enough speed, we would take off. Right. That's a weird situation. Oh. But it also showed that controlling it once airborne might be a problem. Now, after 3 weeks and almost 400 hours of work, we were about to find out if it was all going to be worth it. Would we fly? I can see the sun resting. Yeah.
The bits in the middle where I am, it's not going anywhere.
Despite giving it everything, we never got clear of the water.
Jam, you know we totally believe in you, right? But could this be your very first failure? Have you lost your mojo?
Okay, Liz. It's not out of the question. It really isn't. It turns out that it doesn't matter what something flies through, making a plane in a fortnight is almost impossible. But I do have a plan.
Good.
In the old days when they struggled with one wing, they gave themselves two. So I am going to build myself a biplane.
It's a good idea, but before we do that, it's time to catch up with Dr. Yan and his street science. Don't forget, this week he's gone 3D, so you're going to be needing a pair of these.
Okay, here's your chance to experience 3D TV using just one lens from a pair of sunglasses. Now, I want you to cover just one eye with the sunglasses lens. The darker tint, the better. You look a bit silly wearing them, but yeah, very nice, stylish. You look great, don't you? And I'm going to use this as a simple pendant, okay? And all I want you to do is watch it. I'm not trying to hypnotise you or anything.
Well, it's there to me, I so that's it.
Yeah. Now, does it look like it's going straight from side to side, or a bit round in a circle?
It's going around and around.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
Like this.
Yeah.
Serpent.
Some people see it and some people don't.
Side to side.
Side to side for you.
Well, actually, now that you say it, that's actually it does.
like slower to me. It's like time stopped. Well, it looks side to side to me. I tell you what, I'll face you straight on and see if that. Oh no, it's going around the circle. Whoa, right. Okay, and now take the glasses off and see if it really is going straight side to side on the circle.
Side to side.
Yeah, that's strange.
Yeah, so the fact that one eye is covered with a lens and the other isn't is causing an optical illusion. That is really weird. Why does it do that? The reason is when light hits the back of the eye, it triggers a response. And brighter light gives a faster response than dimmer light. And so the dark lens means that one eye is getting dimmer light than the other. And so the image in that eye is formed a little bit more slowly. And the weird thing is that this means that you're seeing things happen at a slightly different time in one eye to the other eye. And normally that doesn't matter. For things that aren't moving, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. But for something that's moving from one side to the other, the dark lens means that one eye is seeing things lagging just slightly behind the other eye. So as this is swinging, then the normal eye will see it, say, here, okay, but the darker, slower eye will see it, say, here.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Why does that make it look like it's going round then?
Because the brain uses the offset in view between one eye and the other eye to calculate how far away something is, then that very slight lag tricks it into miscalculating how far away it is. It miscalculates the distance. Okay? So the miscalculation should mean that when the pendulum's moving towards the darker side, it appears closer than it really is.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I like the science on it as well.
Very good. Next week, Jan is going to be in 4D.
You are so lying.
I might be lying. Actually, have you ever wondered whether you could beat one of those FBI polygraph tests?
Yeah, and I know I'd be rubbish.
Well, the interesting thing is we actually hone our lying skills from a very, very early age.
Really?
Have a look at this. Could any child resist a feast like this? Well, let's see. So I'll be down in a couple of minutes, so you guard the food, remember? No eating. Okay, I'll be back in a minute. There was something we all do from a very early age, unless you're me, of course, and that is lying. So what I've done here is I've got a group of 4-year-olds, and I've set up a big table full of party food, and I've told them they're not allowed to eat it. Let's just see what happens. What they don't know is that I've set up some hidden cameras, so they've got no idea at all they're being watched. The temptation proved too much. Straight into the pink pig biscuits. Crisps are gone. It's kicking off. So the question is, will they admit to it when I go downstairs? Hi guys! How are you guys getting on? You what? Have you not eaten anything?
No,
Hands up who's eaten something.
not me.
No? You're absolutely sure? You're all telling the truth? No, because you've been so good, I think it's time to have some snacks. So who'd like some food?
Me.
Okay, then help yourselves.
I'm gonna have the flour.
Now it looks as if butter wouldn't melt in their mouths, but like most kids their age, they're already natural born liars. It's only when you get a little bit older that you become a bit more accomplished at it. So even as toddlers, we're little fibbers. But though we might be masters of the art of deception, we're amateurs when it comes to spotting when we're being lied to. That's why I've come to America, to take on the FBI's first line of defense against lies. The polygraph machine. What we're going to do is we're going to attach these sensors to you, and we're going to ask you some questions. We see the responses on the computer screen, and we compare those responses, we determine deception.
Is your name Robert Dallas Campbell?
Yes. The machine reads a variety of stress signals from my body as I try and suppress a lie. So in theory, I can beat it by making sure I'm feeling stressed even when I'm telling the truth.
Okay, we're going to begin.
Okay. And for me, the best way to achieve that is by doing mental arithmetic.
Have you ever betrayed the trust of a friend or family member?
Okay, here we go. 406 minus 22.5 equals 3.
Do you possess a maths A level.
Okay, here's the line. Now relax. The line will be... Yes. After 45 minutes of questioning, I'd only told one line, but would the polygraph machine be able to spot it? That was really stressful. Okay, bottom line, hit me with it. How did I get on?
Well, according to the polygraph, you do not possess a maths A level.
Oh, I can't believe it. I was trying so hard to suppress it. You're absolutely right, I don't. I'm guilty, as charged. This bar chart shows how my body's galvanic response peaked at question 3, the one question where I lied. It's a measure of the electrical resistance of my skin, and it's just one of the physiological responses the machine measures. Now, I may never beat the polygraph machine, but many people do, so it's now being deemed unreliable by America's National Academy of Science. Unfortunately, though, for would-be criminals, lie detection has just taken a big scientific step forwards. A foolproof way to look directly at what's going on in your brain. Now that's a scary thought. Hi, Dr. Hubbard?
Dallas.
Nice to meet you. So you reckon that you can actually read my mind?
Definitely.
Bring it on. Okay. The idea is that an fMRI scanner will literally watch my brain as I lie.
Okay, so here we go. Dallas, we're going to start now. Answer all the questions by pressing their yes or no buttons. Roger, okay? Is your name Robert Dallas Campbell? Have you got maths A level?
Finally, with no opportunity to call a friend or even ask the audience, it was all over, and all I had to do was wait for the results. It's quite an experience lying in there, but here we go, moment of truth. Can you tell whether I was lying or not?
Yes, you were lying when you said you were a maths A level.
Oh no, that's amazing. How can you tell?
There's a particular area of your brain, the left inferior lateral frontal cortex, that activates when you're lying.
So that area is about here on my head.
That's right. Your left temporal is this area, which is where the blood flow is increased when those nerve cells are activating.
So why are these areas so active when we lie?
That's the part of the brain that's involved in what's called working memory. When you're lying, you have to know what the truth is, and then essentially struggle, be in conflict about not saying the truth.
So that is a big old orange blob.
That's right. And you don't see that big old orange blob on this one. Right. This is the scan when you were asked the question about what your name is. And you don't see that activation on this one. So you were telling the truth about your name.
So what's with all the blue then?
Blue means your brain was less active.
So when you mean less active, do you mean there's less blood in those blue areas?
Yes, you had less blood flow into those areas.
Okay. I can't believe it that scientifically there's no way I can hide from the truth. I can't believe it. My own brain's given me away.
I admire you in so many ways. You were just rubbish with that polygraph.
I was rubbish, but they are hard. That's the point of a polygraph. They're difficult.
They are difficult, but from experience, nowhere near as difficult as building a human-powered hydrofoil.
I know, I was there.
After a week of late nights, our new biplane hydrofoil was ready for the water once more. But before takeoff, I thought it would be a good idea to explain the theory to my co-pilot.
Biplane. It's an idea we stole from the Wright brothers. In the old days, when their planes weren't powerful enough, when the engines weren't powerful enough, they said, not getting enough lift off one wing, let's have two. And the net result of that is biplanes don't fly very fast, but they lift with less power.
Right.
So we've decided to compromise on top speed, but go for an earlier takeoff.
If I've done my sums right, and Dallas has trained hard enough, as we hit 9.6 kilometers per hour, our two slender wings should be providing the quarter of a ton of lift we'll need to fly. Then we'll need to learn how to control it in the air or start swimming.
Wind up a little bit, and then when I say go, just gun it.
All right.
Ready? Go! Right, take speed down.
Despite all my calculations, we just could not produce the thrust we needed for a successful takeoff.
We had lift on one side.
But then salvation came, from the most unlikely of places.
Just had a thought.
Yep.
So the problem is we're just too heavy for this craft.
Yep.
What would happen if one of us pedalled it?
Well, we would have half the power,
I know.
but we'd have lost a third of the weight.
Yeah.
I mean, you're, say, 80 kilos,
Yeah.
boat's 80 kilos, I'm 80 kilos. On the one hand, Dallas, I think that's a very naive thing to say. On the other hand, it could be a stroke of genius, because it means that we can take off at a lower speed,
Yeah.
which means it potentially would have a lower power requirement,
That's exactly what I was thinking.
and it's like one of them cube-square laws.
That's
It could do it.
yeah. It's all up there.
Alice, that's a bit left field, but surprisingly, I think you're right.
All my focus was getting to the point where both hulls came clear of the water.
Okay, here we go.
At that moment, the drag they create would disappear, and the power I'd need to stay airborne would be cut by about a half.
This is it. It looks good. The front's lifting up. Keep going. Keep going. Come on. Come on. Come on.
Sadly, that moment never came.
That time was good. The holes were almost out of the water.
Then, I had a truly radical idea.
So one thing left to try. The way I see it is we're so close, the only thing that's stopping us is the weight and drag of the hulls themselves.
Agreed.
So, I think we ditch them.
This was my secret weapon, something I'd been resisting until now. By using electromagnets to hold the hulls to the frame, I had the option to drop them at the flick of a switch. The result would be that the hulls would fall away, reducing both weight and drag instantly. But once they'd gone, there would be no way back. I'd have to fly or sink. As I approached takeoff speed, I ditched the hulls and the craft began to climb. It was running just on the lift provided by the hydrofoils. But then, with no time to learn to fly the thing, my magnificent flying machine quickly turned submarine.
That was totally awesome. It's like flying, only in water.
That wasn't too shabby at all. You got lift off. I'm so impressed with you. Well done.
I am just so relieved that we flew at all. It felt like doing a 3-year naval architecture degree in a fortnight.
Nice. We'll see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.
George, guess the
In the old days when they struggled with one wing, they gave themselves two. So, like those guys there, I'm going to build myself